Welcome back to another episode of 40 Facts About the 40k Universe. I am your host, Gersh1, and you are watching One Mind Syndicate. Today we continue talking about the Exorcist chapter, as we get into some notable campaigns, relics, and some other coolness by this chapter. Now, before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and also make a suggestion down below and tell me what Space Marine special character you guys would like us to create a video for. But with that said, let's get into 40 facts about the Exorcist chapter. One of the most notable campaigns undergone by the Exorcist chapter is the Ashen War in the 300th year of the 41st millennium. The Ashen War was a series of brushfire revolts and chaos incursions that erupted across the Ashen subsector. After a bloody chaos cult uprising on the cardinal world of Dimimar exposed how overstretched Imperial control over the surrounding region had become. Slowly stripped of much of its defenses over the course of several generations to provide for the needs of other conflicts nearby, this border region was ill-equipped to stave off catastrophe when it came. Very rapidly, a three-way war developed between the beleaguered Imperial protectors of the Ashen Worlds, Chaos Cultists who had converted several planetary defense garrisons to their cause, and Orc marauders pouring across the border from the adjacent Bloodmaw cluster. The Imperial counter-invasion was led by the combined force of two Space Marine chapters, the Exorcists and the Dark Hands, backed by the Necromundan 54th and 60th Imperial Guard Rifles, and the Battle Sisters of the Order of the Valorous Heart. The Exorcists quickly realized that one of the keys to victory would be locating and destroying the single Dark Master of many names. It lurked behind the divergent chaos cults in the region, a demonic creature that on Dimimar was known as the Horned God, a thing of shadow and malice. The Horned God was a master of hellish pacts who had become engorged on the souls its servants had slaughtered. When the Exorcist finally cornered the Demon Prince in the maze-like pre-human ruins of the dead world of Belphago, it was attended by a guard of 1,000 of its fanatical followers and several warbands of Night Lord's Chaos Space Marines it had bound in its will. What followed was one of the hardest fought and costly actions in the chapter's history. The Exorcist, with the aid of a hastily composed Ordo Malleus strike team, fought their way through the suicidal attack waves of cultists and the skillful ambush and vicious assault of the Night Lords before confronting the blackening, burning demon that served the Horned God. In a final titanic struggle amid the fallen ruins of the Xenos Temple to the Dark Gods older than history of mankind, the Exorcists' elite Enochian Guard and a handful of surviving Inquisitors and their acolytes confronted the Lord of Shadows in all his blasphemous and unholy glory. Shrugging off shot, shell, and energy blast, the Dark Beast slashed through the Exorcist ranks, shearing Terminator-clad warriors in half with ease, and ripping asunder the demon hosts of Inquisitor Grey before devouring their master whole. The Exorcists refused to retreat from the horror that confronted them, despite their losses, and slowly the weight of their attack began to take a toll. The turning point of the battle came when one of the chapter's dreadnoughts, the venerable Cybra, sacrificed himself to rip a great chunk off the Demon Prince's smoldering body and expose its blazing heart. This noble act allowed the Exorcists to press their attack while the demon reeled in agony. With a daring lunge, Librarian Malkite pierced the foul heart with his forespear. The weapon severed the demon's connection with the mortal plane, finally vanquishing it. As the Demon Prince's cries of rage and frustration echoed into eternity, all across the Ashen subsector, those who had bartered their souls for a measure of the Horned God's power paid the price and were consumed by black flames, shattering the power of chaos revolts. A full third of the Exorcist chapter had perished, but the tide of war was now in the Imperium's favor, and within a year, the subsector was brought back under Imperial control. Yet another notable campaign fought by the Exorcist chapter occurred in the 740th year of the 41st millennium, known as the Relief of Stonecrawl. The Relief of Stonecrawl was the defense of the minor frontier world of Stonecrawl, within the realm of Ultramar and the Ultima Segmentum, from a small incursion of the Tyranids of Highfleet Behemoth. A scheduled trader vessel, the Nostros Vex, appeared 3 weeks overdue and drifting, seemingly lifeless, at the edge of the Stonecrawl system, and it was investigated by vessels sent out from a small Imperial colony in the system. This heralded the beginning of a nightmare for the colonists of Stonecrawl. Soon, a rapidly multiplying infestation of High Fleet behemoths gene-stealers broke out, and in an ever-growing plague, the horrific creatures hacked through the scattered settlements of Stonecrawl, like the butcher's cleaver through raw meat. Alone and realizing their astropathic distress calls were unlikely to be unanswered, the remaining Stonecrawl colonists did their best to gather their few weapons together and mount a defense, determined to sell their lives dearly if they could. When all seemed lost, and only the last major settlements remained, all that was left for the terrified men and women cowering behind feudal barricades was to pray for deliverance to the God Emperor. Yet that deliverance came as deep Crimson Thunderhawk gunships descended on plumes of fire above them. The Exorcist Spacemarine Chapter's 3rd Company, driven off course by the Tyrannid Psychic Shadow in the Warp, had heard the colony's cries for help. Their strike cruiser, Hand of Glory, having already slain 2 encroaching Void Krakens in the outer system, now offloaded its complement of Space Marines to make a stand on Stonecrawl's broken ground. The battles that followed were swift but furious, the Gene-Stealers first seeking to infiltrate by stealth, only to be met by the firepower of the Exorcist Astartes waiting for them. The Tyrannid broods quickly shifted tactics and sought to overwhelm their foe in a whirlwind of fangs and claws. Inured as they were to the terrors of the warp, even these nightmarish Xenos, although deadly beyond measure, held little fear for the Exorcist Space Marines. With near clinical efficiency, the Space Marines set up interlocking fields of fire to trap their attackers into prepared killing zones, in order to blunt the Gene-Stealers' advantage in speed and numbers. Meanwhile, the Exorcist Potent Librarian, Castor Mackin, sought out the Synap creatures present within the brood and scoured them to ashes with soul fire. The people of Stonecrawl survived thanks to the Exorcist's efforts, a small victory perhaps in the grand scheme of the greater battle against the High Fleet, but a victory nonetheless. After action testimony taken by the Ordo Xenos investigators recorded the fearful awe the surviving colonists felt for their saviors, and many spoke of how the sound of baleful litanies the Exorcists chanted during battle still echoed in their dreams. The Exorcist chapter participated in the latter stages of the Badab War, led by Silas Alberic, the famed Exorcist 3rd Company captain and heir designate to the command of the chapter. The Exorcists intervened in the conflict once the secessionists had been declared excommunicate traitors in the year 908 of the 41st millennium. Alberic, huge in stature even for a Space Marine, gained great fame and recognition for himself in the Badab War, leading his Space Marines in several noteworthy engagements. The first of these was the taking of the armed merchantman Soyuz Maru during the Second Battle of Sagan, and the last was the bloody attack on the vital and heavily defended Sentinel Sigma station during the fall of Badab Primaris. In this latter battle, Alberic wielded the Hellslayer power mace to great effect, rapidly smashing his way through the armored bulkhead while under heavy fire from the Astroclaws. Alberic slew the Astroclaws chaplain, Arkil Lionsmane, in personal combat, despite still suffering from grievous wounds earned in prior battles. The Exorcist's otherwise exemplary role in the Badab War was tarnished when their blockade of the Badab system failed in the confusion of the final hours of the siege, as anarchy reigned on the surface of Badab Primaris after the Carcharodons fired the reactors of the world's hive cities and started a chain reaction that would doom the planet. In the scramble to flee the surface, both loyalists and secessionists struggled to escape in any spacecraft they could commandeer. In the confusion that followed, the Exorcists fired on and in some cases destroyed any vessel that could not prove itself to be an ally, unfortunately slaying many fellow loyalists in the process. To make matters worse, a vessel containing many Astartes from Huron's inner circle escaped the blockade in the confusion. carrying the badly wounded but still living form of their master into the Maelstrom, who would later return to plague the Imperium once more as Huron Blackheart, the Chaos Lord who commanded the tyrannical warband of Chaos Space Marines, who called themselves the Red Corsairs. In another notable campaign, Inquisitor Lord Cote of the Ordo Malleus led planet-wide exorcisms of Orpidia, casting out millions of demon hosts and slaying the demon prince Carpathai. Crucial to the Inquisitor's victory was the deployment of the second company of the Exorcist chapter, whose librarians enacted rites of detestation unknown outside of their chapter's cult. The Exorcists have in their possessions various relics, one of which is the Serpent Staff of Zavazius, a force staff formerly carried by the famed Exorcist Epistolary, Zavazius. This weapon was as much a symbol of office as a potent weapon, through which he was able to focus his arcane powers. This master-crafted weapon was created for him by the finest artificers of the chapter, a weapon thought long lost with the trace of the epistolary himself. The so-called Serpent Staff resides in Watch Fortress Erico in the Jericho Reach, set into a niche with Sabaziu's cell when the epistolary disappeared during his last mission. Legends state that at the very moment of its owner's descent into the raging fires of the crater on the world of Androconus Prime, the staff came alive in its resting place, its rigid form twisting like that of a reptile, an event that earned it its name. Though the transformation was only temporary and witnessed by the Deathwatch chapter serfs, it was later declared a genuine phenomenon. The Serpent Staff was transplanted from its resting place in the cell of the lost epistolary and placed within the catacombs of Erico, along with countless other relics of the Long Watch. Within a day, however, the staff was found to be missing, and following an exhaustive search, it was discovered in its original resting place, in the niche in its former owner's cell. Since that time, the Serpent Staff of Sabazius has been carried into battle by numerous subsequent generations of Deathwatch librarians. Several have fallen in battle while carrying it, and in at least 3 known instances, the staff has somehow returned to its resting place even when its bearer's body was unrecovered. The staff was even returned to the Exorcist chapter itself at one time. Yet a standard year later, it was found back in its niche on Erico. As a result, the former cell of Epistolary Sabazius has been declared sacred ground, and it is maintained as a shrine to the fallen hero. And those were 40 facts about the Exorcist chapter. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. There's going to be a part 3, but if you don't want to wait for part 3, click on the description below. There's a link there that takes you to the wiki page for the Exorcist chapter. You can read more about the Exorcist chapter there and add to whatever lore that you can add to. Of course, just read up on how to do that and whatnot first. But again, guys, a huge favor. I'm asking a huge favor from you guys. Please comment down below and let us know what Space Marine special character you guys would like us to create a video for. We're tallying up that information so we can provide more awesome content for you guys. Well, content that you guys want to listen to. And of course, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you're already a subscriber, that's great, that's awesome. Don't forget to hit the little notification button, and please share this with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, with your mom, your dad, that weird guy that always asks you, what are you playing, when he walks near you and he sees you guys playing your little tabletop games and shit. Damn, I'm tired. It's 11:30. But anyways, I'll catch you guys tomorrow. This was Gersh1 with One Mind Syndicate, signing out.